Good morning or good afternoon, depending when you're watching this. Here we have black, blue, yellow, and red, and white. Black and white are neutral colors, but the others are the primary colors. This is magenta, primary blue, and chrome yellow, though I suspect that whatever combination you use will produce a similar results. Prime your canvas. You should already be used to that. And first, let's start to make the neutral colors, which are white, black, and gray. You need to learn how to manipulate your brush. So you can see I'm twisting and turning the brush in such a way to get these circles, which is what I want to represent my neutral colors in this case, but the regular colors in any case. Now, be sure to create a gray that's different than your background gray. I know that you prime with gray, but you want to make sure that your gray is visible. So do it either a little darker or a little lighter. Now, just keep the pure red when it comes time to start putting your first primary. Keep the pure red, you're going to keep the pure yellow, and you're going to keep the pure blue. There's something that we need to discuss in class, which is opacity versus transparency. And you're going to learn quickly when you start painting that some colors are transparent, like the yellow. Since the yellow is transparent, it requires multiple layers to produce a solid yellow. When you're switching from color to color, make sure that you clean your brush if you're only using one brush. That way it doesn't taint the next color. So you're going to see me use my bottle a lot to clean my brush. Whenever you see the bottle on screen, that's what I'm doing. Now that the primaries are done, it's time to start mixing our secondary colors. The first color that I'm going to mix is green. Now, all of the secondary colors are made by mixing the primaries. Green specifically is made by mixing yellow and blue. Now, blue can dominate yellow if you're not too careful. So depending on what type of green you want to vary the amount of blue that you use. Also, it's recommended only use a little bit of the more dominant color. You could always add more, but you can't suddenly take that out of the mixture. Next to the green, you're going to have a yellow green and a blue green. Remember that the primary color dominates. So it shouldn't be a green yellow, it should be a yellow green. That's why here with the yellow green, you see me work it and rework it. On top of the fact that it's very transparent, especially with these student grade paints. If you were to use a more expensive paint, it might not be as transparent. You might get more opacity, right? But what you're going to see me do with the yellows especially is you're going to see me layering them throughout the course of this video, and that makes it look more opaque. Now, it's important to understand that this is a crucial part of the process. You have to have patience. You have to be willing to work it and rework it. And especially for the transparent colors, there's really no other way around it. You could mix a transparent color with a more opaque color to get that solidness, but it will change the nature of the color. Make sure that you're constantly cleaning your brushes, cleaning your palette knife, especially for an assignment like this, where we have to keep the purity of the color. Now, if you're following along with me, the next thing that you should do is mix your blue-green, which you're going to place to the left of your green. And you could kind of envision how this is going to play out. Now that we've done our green, which is one of our secondary colors, then we're going to do our orange and we're going to do our violet. And then we're going to do variants of those colors, mixing them with the primary. One thing I really like about priming the canvas gray, like you just saw me do right there, is that original gray serves as an eraser of sorts, right? So whenever you feel like you've made a mistake, you could go back to that original gray and erase it, or whatever the background color happens to be. Here you see me adding another layer of yellow. I think that's the third layer. The more layers you add, the more opaque that yellow is going to become. Now here you see me mixing our orange. Actually, that one ended up being a little bit more red-orange, so I put it to the side. I used a little bit more yellow in the next batch. And then after I mix this orange, I'm going to mix yellow-orange. Whatever the dominant, whatever is said first, so yellow-orange, you use more yellow. Red-orange, you use more red, right? So that's how you kind of determine how you're going to mix those if you're ever confused. And of course, you make orange by mixing red and yellow. Sometimes students get that mixed up though, because they say red, orange. So they use red and then they look for orange. No, you use more red and a little bit of yellow, right? Here we're doing the same thing with violet, and you have the red violet and you have the blue violet next to it. But remember, when you say red violet, it's primarily red with a little bit of blue, right? In this case, you're not going to have these other colors available to you unless if you have them yourself. And if you do have these colors, I ask you not to use them, because the whole point is to learn to mix color. Finally, once the secondary and the primary colors are done, we have to think about a tertiary color. I don't know if I said that correctly, but it's a color that you get by mixing all three of the primaries, but you mix them in different amounts. So what would that color be? Well, that color is brown, and that's going to go in the center. How do you get brown? You get brown by mixing complements. What are complements? Complements are opposites on the color wheel. So if you look at your color wheel, and quite literally the colors that are on opposite ends, those are complements. So it would be orange and blue, violet and yellow, and red and green. And by mixing those together, you can get a brown. Here, I slowed it down here a little bit to show you what happened here. It went green on me, right? So I mixed orange and blue, and if you have them in the correct amounts, this shouldn't happen. But if this does happen, and sometimes it does, like a combination goes sideways, you have to know how to react to it. So in this particular case, if it went green on me, I'm going to add the complement of green. And the complement of green happens to be red, and that's going to push it back towards brown, right? So it depends how much do you have to add. So I added a little bit and it created a dark brown. I added a lot more and it created a lighter brown, which I was happy with. Now you could pick either of these three to put in the center of your color wheel. I mixed two of them, and that's how I got my brown, and that's how you mix brown, again, by mixing complements. It's actually very important, and there's another section in this video that shows specifically the complements, because I really want you to memorize them. Over on the bottom right of your canvas, I want you to start making a value scale. A value scale, remember, is when you go from light to dark, but I want you to do it with colors this time. Here, it's pretty easy to think, well, I'm going to mix white to make something lighter. That's not always the case, right? So you shouldn't always think like that, and sometimes it just plain doesn't work. So here you see that I mixed white with yellow, worked well. I tried to mix black with yellow to make it dark, didn't work so well. It kind of went green on me. So I'm actually going to mix the complement of yellow into yellow to produce a darker yellow. Now, look at the amount that I'm using there. It's a very minute amount, right? The quantities that you mix matter, and you don't want to mix too much or it's going to go full brown on you. Instead of making a darker yellow, it's going to go brown. So this is also why painting or mixing color can be so complex, because the quantities matter. Do I use a little bit or do I use a lot? General rule of thumb is use a little bit, and if you need more, you add more. But if once you add more, you can't take it out. Now the black worked fine for the blue. I needed to add a little bit more red there for the black and the red, because black is such a dominant color, and I lost all of my red initially. There you have a beautiful pink, you have red, and you have maroon. You have a sky blue, you have kind of a medium blue, and you have a dark blue. The yellow, again, it's transparent, and in order to do it accurately, you would have to add many layers, which I did by the end of this. I want you to do the same thing with your complements. So go ahead and mix yourself an orange, mix yourself a green, and mix yourself a violet. Again, notice the quantities. If you do 1/2 yellow, 1/2 blue, you're just going to produce a considerably darker green. Same thing with the red. So notice the quantities. I only used a little bit of blue because blue can dominate those other colors. Go ahead and do the same thing with your secondary colors. Mix white into it. You could experiment with you could experiment with black to see if it'll give you a darker variant. Or you can also use its complement, which should push it towards brown, which should also make the original color a little bit darker. There I got a light green that I was happy with. And then actually, in order to darken that green, I used a little bit of blue. I didn't go with black. Same thing with the violet. For the orange, I mixed the complement of the orange into it, which was blue. So in order to darken all of these secondary colors, I used blue. Here with my violet, I got a light violet by mixing white, the neutral, and of course, my darker violet by mixing blue. I want you to go ahead and put those in the same way that you did with the primaries. And you quite might not realize how important complements are, but I know how important they are. So there's one extra section of this that is dedicated specifically to complements. I need you to understand at least the basic ones, what the complements of the primaries are. And so here on the left of your color value scale, you're going to specifically put spaces for the complements. So remember, complements are opposites on the color wheel. So the opposite on the color wheel from orange is blue. The opposite on the color wheel from green is red. And the opposite on the color wheel from yellow or violet is yellow or violet, right? Just look at your color wheel. Color wheels are different, but typically this holds true. Here at the bottom, here I'm layering up the yellow again. Here at the bottom, I'm putting warm colors and cool colors. You could consider these like the families of the colors. And it's really helpful in communication during critique. So if I tell you something needs a little bit more warmth, it means it needs a little bit more yellow, orange, or red. If I say something needs to be a little bit more cool, typically it means it needs more green, violet, or blue. Finally, to wrap this up, and just for the sake of practice, I want you to get the thinnest brush that you have, and I want you to try to write with it. I want you to write warm and cool. I want you to make arrows between the complementary colors. I want you to write complements. I want you to write color value scale. I want you to write neutral. I want you to do all of those things to help you practice manipulating your brush. I want you to write primary colors on top of red, next to yellow, and next to blue. Secondary colors next to orange, green, and violet. And then you could put TERT period for short on top of your brown. And with that, this project comes to an end. This project is going to be a challenge for you. So you need to prepare yourself mentally, okay? But it is essential in order for your improvement, in order for you to understand color, in order for you to get better. I'll see you guys in class. See ya. Bye.